our panelists today. First, we've got Joy Tewksbury. Joy is from Maine. Her home mountain is Sunday River, and she has a current U14 racer. So Joy will be sharing that part of her journey. Next up, we have Diana. Diana is representing the West Coast. She is located at Big White, and she has 3 kids. And the youngest is almost 15, and will be talking about her ski parenting journey. Michelle is in Stratton, Vermont, but formerly a ski mom to Connecticut racers. She's got a senior in high school and a freshman in high school. And Michelle will be talking about, so we'll have some moms with older racers and some younger ones. And then finally, we've got Darcy Mumley with us. Darcy is from Sugarbush, Vermont, so she's right in my neck of the woods. And she grew up as a ski racer and went to a ski academy, and she has a U8 and a U12. So she's kind of representing that younger group, and she also coaches some of the younger ones as well. So we have a nice group of experiences with us. And we're going to kick it off with Joy because she's the first square that I see. So Joy, tell us a little bit about how your son started racing and where he is now in his ski racing journey. And then we'll go on and bump it to Diana after that.
Great. Hi, everyone. My son, he is a first-year U14, currently racing the Gould Academy competition program at Sunday River. He started as a first-year U8. I think he was 6 his first season, and he's sneaking behind me. He started at Ski Bradford, which is a tiny hill in Haverhill, Massachusetts. In their program, it's a learn to race program that races in the Buddy Warner, like northern Massachusetts, against a few smaller hills. He outgrew that program as a U10. When you're winning a 28-second course by like 6 seconds, you know it's time to move on to a bigger hill. So then we had to make that choice of where we wanted to end up spending our winters as a family, and in the end we chose Sunday River, partly because that's where we wanted to end up skiing, and the commute from the weekend commute, it's about 2.5 hours from home. We did look into Sugarbush and up that way, but that's pushing 3.5 to 4 hours, and to do that on a weekly basis was too much. So that's how we started.
And I think that's a really good point, Joy, that you bring up in the beginning, is just, and we'll get to that a little bit later on, is really thinking about, is it a repeatable process weekend after weekend after weekend? So Diana, we'll jump to you and we'll hear a little bit about your and where you are now.
Hi, everybody. Well, my daughter, my youngest, I have 2 kids from a previous marriage, so they're a fair bit older, but my youngest started racing at 6 years old. The club that we ended up joining into runs a ski swap every year, and we just, I'm a past instructor from many years ago, and having 3 kids, we use the ski swap a lot to buy our equipment, and we just happened to be at the ski swap and entered our name into a draw to win a free get to know us camp for the ski club. And I had always taught my kids to ski, so I thought nothing about putting them in a club because I could teach them. And my daughter's name was drawn for the contest, and so she won a free weekend. She tried it out and absolutely loved it. So that was it. And here we are 8 years later, actually 9 years later, and we're still in it. And now I'm the vice president of the club. My husband's the treasurer of the club. We help with a lot of aspects of the club. And my daughter is now in the U16 age group, and our club runs a thing called the Coach Apprentice Program. So she's doing the Coach Apprentice Program, and just today she certified as a level 1 instructor. So that's kind of, we started many moons ago accidentally, and we're still in it.
And I love that you brought that up, and I think that's one of the topics we'll cover is embracing the community, because it's going to be something that the entire family gets into, and we'll touch on that more. But thank you for kind of doing that introduction there, Diana. So next we have Michelle. Michelle's home mountain is Stratton, Vermont, but her kids did start in Connecticut, so you don't have to be by the big mountains to get started. And Michelle, I will let you take it from there.
Thank you. Well, good evening, everybody. So yes, we started at Mohawk Mountain, which is in Cornwall, Connecticut. So more of a hill than an actual mountain. And, but my kids started ski racing also at 6 years old, skiing at 2. My husband is Canadian and was a competitive racer and skied at a very high level and got the kids on snow early. So it definitely takes, one parent who at least fully embraces the sport to really get it going. But I now have a first year U16 and a FIS racer who will be graduating from Stratton Mountain School in June. And they're both at Stratton Mountain School, by the way. They both started there. We moved from Mohawk up to Vermont when my son was in 6th grade and my daughter in 8th.
Awesome, thank you. Okay, so Darcy, I'm going to ask you to, there we go, I'm asking you to unmute. And Darcy is at my home mountain, Sugarbush. She grew up in Vermont and was a ski racer herself. And she's got some of the younger kids of the panelists. So Darcy, and is a coach. So Darcy, I'll let you take it away.
Yeah, I grew up ski racing, obviously, and went to GMBS, graduated many years ago. And then sort of got out of ski racing. I still kept skiing quite a bit. And then when my kids were at the age to start the program, I decided to coach, and that was probably 4 years ago. My oldest started at 6. He was 6. And now he is a U12, a first year U12. And then my youngest is a U8. I'm currently leading the U8 program at GMBS right now. So he will luckily be moving up to U10. So hopefully I won't have to coach him as much. But yeah, I kind of grew up on a mountain like your kids all are right now. And it's a really amazing way to grow up. So I love the idea of trying to get more people to let their kids have a childhood on the mountain like we did, like you are, and like I got to have when I was younger.
So Darcy, I'll throw the first question your way. And at what age do you think kids typically start, and what age, from the Ski Mom wisdom, would you say is a good time to start within a ski racing program?
Yeah, when I started, kids didn't start this young. I feel like now, if a child is a U12 and they haven't done a race program, then they could struggle. I think it's harder to start as a U12 just because kids are starting so young. I don't think it's necessary to have them start at 6. I think some kids, it's too young for them. They're not quite ready for it. And it's not that they're not going to be racers or they're not going to be ready someday. But as you know, all kids develop at different times. So some 6-year-olds aren't ready. And I don't think that's a reason to say, oh, he or she is not going to be a racer. So, I think the U10 years are probably the best time to start. Second year U8 is ideal. But yeah, around the young, everybody thinks that they need to be super, super young, but there is definitely a balance there.
That's awesome. And now, and I think all of us probably, our kids all started probably around that age, I think 6, 7, it sounds like everybody on the panel there. Okay, so we'll throw this next one to Diana. So it sounds like you chose, the team kind of chose you because you picked a name out of a hat. But maybe, but now that you're a vice president of the club and you're so involved, are there things that you would advise potential parents when they're looking at clubs? What would you say to look for?
I'm in, I guess, a situation where we don't have a ton of clubs to choose from in our geographical area. We have every club is at least an hour's drive from the big cities. So if you were halfway in between those two cities, I mean, in our area, you decide based on the mountain you like the best. We have great coaches throughout our entire community and our entire region. And a lot of them, a lot of the kids there are kids who have grown up in our program who now race at or coach at the neighboring hill. So it's very much even between the hills. It's a big community. So it's not very often that somebody gets to pick a club, but there is in our hill, we do have freestyle as well as Alpine. And I think that's probably the bigger question I get from parents for our club is, how do I know if I should put my kid in racing or put them in freestyle? And if you ask most of our coaches, they'll say, put them in the race club for a couple of years before you put them in freestyle to give them a better foundation of skiing skills before they go and start going off jumps and learning how to land and that kind of thing. That it's almost it's easier to transition from Alpine to freestyle than it is to go from freestyle to Alpine. So that's kind of a bit of advice that I give parents who are on the fence of where their kids should go, is give them a really strong legs and balance and a platform before they start doing flips.
Thank you, Diana. And so Michelle, you moved mountains. Michelle and I met in Cornwall at Mohawk, and you had not the same pathway, but you moved mountains. How did you know when it was time to switch from one mountain to another?
Well, it was really driven by the kids and their readiness. When we could see that their progression with their skiing would be better met with a different set of coaches. We moved from a mountain where most of the coaches were parents and or volunteers, and that was great. I mean, the reason why we got the kids so into ski racing so early is because of the camaraderie and the community. And but then when we realized that the kids really needed some more professional coaching, not that there weren't professional coaches at Mohawk, but a different level of professional coaching, then we made the switch.
And Joy, you did something similar. So one of the questions when people are considering, getting going is, what is the time commitment when you're just getting started? So let's think about like a U10 or a U8. What would you tell a new parent who's looking at a ski racing program to be prepared for time commitment wise?
For us, when we were U8 and then also U10, we were at a local hill that was 12 minutes from our house. So they had practices 2 nights a week, Tuesday, Thursday evenings from like 6 to 8:30, and then races on Sundays. And the races were all within an hour of our house. So there wasn't a huge time commitment other than you gave up like 6 Sundays during the winter. So it did make skiing, doing weekend ski trips harder. Like my in-laws have a house at Bolton Valley in Vermont, and they hated it because we could never go because we always had races on Sundays. Once we transitioned to Sunday River, it's a much bigger commitment because you're committing, as I tell everyone, early November, I'll see you in April. Our friends at home, because we're gone we head up usually Thursday nights and come home Sunday if we're not staying in Maine for the week. And it's a much bigger, we're committing to being gone every weekend because it's not a local hill.
So I think that's a really good point, and it sounds like there's very similar stories amongst the group that when you're getting started, convenience really matters, and you don't want to be doing unwieldy drive times, especially with little kids, when you're looking at programs. So looking at something that is volunteer coached, that is, fewer, a shorter drive time. I will say, one of the great things about it is that you're in with a group of peers. And Darcy, maybe you can talk a little bit about that with the benefits of ski racing is kind of building those little micro communities.
Yeah, I think a lot of those younger kids, the motivation to go up to the mountain and put really uncomfortable ski boots on and freeze in the cold is because they're with their friends.
Yeah.
So it is really, really important. I try as a coach to, let the friends be in the same group, just because they might be at a different level, but their overall happiness is really dependent on them being with their friends. And I think it's also important for the parents. I think a lot of the parents develop connections with other parents, and we take their kids skiing, and you can see them out on the hill, connecting with other people that live in other parts of the state or in other states entirely. And I know when I was a kid, I started racing. My parents weren't skiers really. They learned to ski when I did, when I was 3 and I was the youngest. And I started just because a friend of mine from school was doing the Smuggler's Notch team. So my parents were like, "Oh, she's your best friend. Let's sign you up too." And then you can also carpool with those families,
right?
Which is another. As you know, it's with ski racing. It's a lot of driving. It's a lot of going up there every single weekend. So it's nice if you don't feel like skiing that weekend, you can send them with your neighbor's kids. So yeah, the community is one of the biggest, most important things. And a lot of my friends to this day are kids that I grew up ski racing with.
Okay, so now is the one that everybody needs to brace themselves for. This is the cost component of ski racing, and I don't want to pick on one of you. So, who wants to jump in and talk about the cost involved, and then maybe we can follow up with some ideas on level setting that you don't need, like when you've got a U10. They don't need 4 sets of skis.
Right.
They don't need new skis. But who wants to jump in kind of on the cost component there?
I'm happy to. That is something that you get into it not realizing that, oh, okay, they do need this, that, and the other thing. But like one thing, my friend and I were joking about this last week, and one of her friends was complaining about the cost of hockey. And it's like, yeah, hockey, you pay for your hockey program and your equipment and you're done. Ski racing, if you pay for your program, I know some clubs have volunteer charges that you get refunded back. But then you're paying for each race. Like the registration for each race is on top of your registration for your program. And then just the equipment.
And just to give everyone an idea, it's the participants that are on board. So a typical ski race fees within, no, right now at U16, it's between $65 and $100 per race. Now it's going to be a little bit less expensive, probably outside of Vermont and for the younger ages, but that does cover,
Right.
it covers your lift ticket. And the big thing that it covers is insurance. And everybody, just one of the logistic things within ski racing is that you'll get a USSA membership and you pay for that. And that does help kind of defray the insurance costs across all the organizations. But when you're paying that big ticket price to sign up, it's mostly insurance. Okay, so, and I would say club fees range all over the board. I think, but you're going to be looking, I would say it's under $1,000 is probably not going to happen with lift ticket and a full program. Does everyone agree with that? Like you're not.
Yeah, our local program, I think that one was very inexpensive. I think it was like $500 for the season, but then you're either buying a season's pass or they charged like $25 a night for lift tickets, and then race days it's the $50 or whatever. So, but otherwise, yeah, all the other programs, I know the bigger programs are all over well over $1,000.
I think Cochrane's is probably the only program that's way under.
Do you know if any of the people who are watching here are from outside of the US? Just because costs are a little bit different in Canada. So, oh, you're muted, Nicole.
All right, yes, there are some Canadians in the group. And then one woman chimed in the chat that her program is $1,900, $1,899. So it's expensive. As Darcy was saying, some of the smaller mountains will be a little bit less expensive, but once you're adding in a lift ticket plus the program, just be aware of that, and that is an annual fee that you'll be looking at. So, but there are creative ways to cut down on equipment. Most of the clubs have ski swaps, which are an amazing place to not only sell your old gear but get new gear. I don't think Kiara had a new race suit because she got hand-me-downs and she would buy them. She probably has one of Jackie's or had one over the years. And I think that's a big part of having the community of ski moms is relying on that wealth of knowledge. Okay, so another one was, this is probably a good one for you, Diana, is the one, does ski racing really make your kid safer, or does it put them in more danger? That's a great question. Is it making them more reckless or safer?
My vote on that is it makes them safer. It makes them able to go through the trees and avoid a tree coming up because they're used to skiing around a gate. It makes them be able to avoid that crazy snowboarder who scoots out from the trees unexpectedly, and they can veer away from them. It gives them control on their skis, even at a high speed, where they know how to stop on a dime if they have to. Yeah, they are going fast, but they learn techniques to help deal with the speed that they're going, and the right equipment is obviously extremely important. Having the proper helmets, having the proper when they get into older ages, having the proper speed suit with the padding and the shin guards and the hand guards and there's all these other things that come up. And I just want to back up talking about equipment, and you mentioned places that have swaps. One other piece of advice when it comes to saving money, I strongly recommend to everybody, get to know the other families in your club, to know somebody who's has an older child that you can potentially get their hand-me-down equipment that is, who cared for it, how they took care of it, and you know the condition it's in. That's something that I just didn't want to be missed in advice given. So, but as far as safety, I absolutely believe it makes your kids a safer skier. Absolutely.
So Kate, Kate Alson, who is on here, had just a quick question. She said she was wondering what U8 and U10 is. So U8 is basically 6 and 7 year olds. U10s is basically, hi Kate, is basically 8 and 9 year olds. So somebody had it correct. The cutoff is 12:31. I don't know, Diana, if it's the same in Canada, but basically, so if you're January, I have this child right here is a January 1st birthday.
Oh, so she's lucky.
Yeah. So December 28th, December 30th, not great, but it all equals out in the end. It all doesn't really matter. So Kate,
The other question I was asking was, people are talking about changing hills and all of that kind of stuff. I would imagine that is based on what the motivation is, right? If the kids are going for fun, to get better techniques, have the community, ski more, all of that stuff.
So I think
swap as quickly.
I think this is a great question for Michelle, because she's now got a senior, and she's seen, Jackie started when she was, 6 or 7, and now she's 17, and she's seen kids come into the program, leave the program. So maybe she can talk to that a little bit about, where it grows, where it contracts, and how kind of the motivations change for racers over the years.
Sure. And I think it's also interesting because we're in an enviable position being in Boston area where we could start at a big hill or start at a small hill. But I would actually at the moment be more on the side of, I'd like to find a good community and the camaraderie and not have as much pressure and not have as much competition and competitiveness. My kid is competitive by nature. So I wouldn't be guessing that we aren't going to end up in a different spot if he sticks with it. But I'm just trying to understand, because I'm like, oh my gosh, there's so many choices, but I know where the easiest, shortest commute one is, for instance. Well, and I'm sure that applies to other people. Sorry, go ahead.
No, I was just going to say that in our circumstance, it was definitely, we're focusing on, the decisions were driven by the enthusiasm of the child. And so as she really got more into this, it required a bigger experience, and we just weren't able to, our first mountain experience didn't satisfy all of the needs and just wasn't a challenge. So we made the jump, and we went into this despite, like I said, my husband having some significant experience as a ski racer. He did not go to a ski academy, and so that was a whole new ball game. And it was quite an awakening. I mean, it was a big shift, a very big shift. And I'm sure Darcy understands, having gone to GMVS. It's not what I anticipated, and I didn't really fully embrace how much of a year-round experience ski racing was until we moved to Stratton.
But again, don't get me wrong, I know some people, it sounds like you guys love it and there's just something in the blood. But I have to say, even just talking to a friend who's doing ski racing that is in this group but is not here today, and she was just starting to mention terms, and I'm like, I'm already overwhelmed and I don't even know what all these things mean. And I know it's just the beginning of the journey, but it's so interesting to hear the perspectives and think about all the shifts and the different stages.
And your kid is going to demand it if they want it, right? It'll certainly bubble up from them, because it's in fact, it comes a point where you can't be prodding them to wake up in the morning to drive 2 hours to a race. They've got to want it. If they don't, I mean, it's just too hard, right? If they didn't want it.
So Shelley, who has left a comment, which is a good one. And so both of my kids did start in a Devo program, which is something to consider. So Devo is a hybrid between a weekend ski program and a race program. So Devo is they may send up those little brushies. They look like little the bristles.
Stubbies.
Yes, and it's basically, you're not going to get hurt skiing with those. But they're learning like all mountain skills. They're learning general safety. They're learning to ski within, certain parameters. And it's a really, really fun program to start. So Kate, that may be a good one for everybody in the group to really consider when they're looking at, like, maybe you don't want to do race program right away. Maybe you want to go to a Devo program and kind of suss it out a little bit, is a good way to start. So Shelley, thank you for that one. And I will also say it within the group, we had 2 Alpine skiers, and my younger daughter is now racing in Nordic programs. So she did a year of kind of doing both, and then she did a year of Nordic skiing, and now she does still Alpine ski with the family, which is awesome. And we do family Nordic skiing as well. So, people kind of jump in and jump out of programs, and it is, it can be a lifelong thing. And then you can also leave to ski for middle school some places, and you can leave to ski for a high school. So you leave like your Mountains Weekend program, and some of the high schools have programs which can be a lot of fun, because then you're oriented in the team orientation versus individual sports. So there's a lot of different ways to kind of come at it, and also to off ramp as well. I'm just trying to get, so I think we've gotten through most of our questions that I had ahead of time. So we will, Kate, you had a couple questions, you may have a couple more, but if people want to put them in either the chat, we'll start fielding those because it's now 9:30, and or if people just want to kind of unmute and take it from here, that's great. But we do have one from Laura. She says, for a strong 8-year-old, would you recommend a development team or straight to U10? He is already skiing double blacks with ease at 7. And we don't know where those double blacks are, because it could be a double black in Connecticut, or it could be a double black in Whistler, which would be a very, very different situation. So Darcy, why don't I let you take that one? What do you think about Devo teams versus straight to a racing program?
I guess it depends what's available around them, where they are. But if you do have a good U10 racing program and he loves to ski and he's a strong skier, then absolutely, I would say go for the U10 program.
She's in Quebec, so.
Oh, okay.
More Canadians. Okay, so I think that is all of my questions from the chat. So if anybody has a question, they can put it in the chat, or they can, I guess they can request to get unmuted. I think you can unmute yourself within the script. So Marissa, do you have a question? I see your.
I do. So I have a first year U10, who obviously will be next year a second year U10, but you listen to everyone talk about the jumps from U10s to U12s and changing to FIS helmet and all that. And how big is that jump truly between the, preface it, mine was a U6. So I had a U6 racer, U8, now we're U10s, but kind of looking at that jump from U10 to U12, because I know everyone talks about that's the big jump year, at least where we are.
Where are you?
So we're in Windham, New York. He races for the Windham Race Factory, which is a mountain in the Catskills, for those who don't know the area. We are in Connecticut, and I have to say, Michelle, he is so looking forward to when he gets to high school, racing against the kids in Connecticut, because he goes, after skiing Windham, the mountains in Connecticut really aren't very much. I grew up as a sugarloafer. I grew up in skiing in Maine at Sugarloaf. So that was kind of mine. So yes. So that, hope that answers your question.
Yeah.
I think for the jump from U10 to the U12, at least in Vermont, they start skiing tall pole slalom as a U12. And they also need at least 2 pairs of skis. So they'll need a pair of slalom skis and a pair of GS skis. They'll need shin guards, pole guards. They need either a slalom helmet or a chin bar that goes along their helmet. And I think for our club, at least, it's just more the intensity is upped a little bit. You know, when they're U10s, we really keep it fun and a lot of games. You know, they turn into U12s and they do like real warm-ups where they, they're doing actual legitimate warm-ups that get their heart rate going. And so if they're not into ski racing, I think it's a harder jump. But if your child's already really pumped to ski race, they're excited about skiing the tall pole, and they're excited about all the new equipment. And it's just the commitment as far as equipment goes.
One thing that I can add to that is maybe to check on your local area's guidelines. I know in Canada, each province has its own guidelines that you have to follow. If you're in Alberta, you need a chest protector. If you're in BC, you don't need the chest protector. In BC, you need a hard air helmet at U12, but it does not have to have the FIS label until you're U14. So there's a lot of different rules in different regions. So I would strongly recommend looking into asking your coaches, because they'll be in the know of what is involved cost-wise or equipment-wise. But as far as commitment, in our club, U12 is the first year that they have the option of doing 2 days a weekend, whereas in U10, it's a 1 day a weekend program. So that's the other thing. And also finding out what your race schedule is like on a normal year. This year, obviously, everywhere, it's not a normal year. Here in BC, we're not even allowed to leave our home hill to ski at another hill. So everything is training drills and in inter-club races. And we've done everything we can to make it fun. But there is no travel this year for in BC. But I can't speak to different areas of the United States, but in a normal year, I would definitely look into race schedule and what your commitment is and how many hills you have to go to and how many, all of that kind of thing too. So.
And I will say also a kind of puberty starts hitting more in U12s and U14s, and that maybe more so for boys than for girls. Like some of the boys just add muscle on like all of a sudden, and you almost want to check like their IDs, but they hit puberty at different times. And for some of it is just when they're in that racing process, weight can really help. So a very, very small U8 who's racing against somebody who's happened to be hit a growth spurt, but just tell them to stick with it, because it does all level out. Eventually it becomes much more skill based than it is like who added an extra 20 pounds over,
Right,
or 6 inches over the years.
Diana,
And to
oops, sorry.
speak to Nicole's statement is that often with these racers at these ages in their growth spurts, especially at the beginning of a season, they could grow 8 inches, and cognitively and physiologically, it's not connecting.
Right.
So they could be ripping a course where the first time in gates, they can't buy a turn because physiologically they haven't connected what their bodies could do last year versus their growth. So there's so many variables between U10, U12, and U14. You can have a ripper one season and a kid that can't buy a turn next, and they just have to be patient and have the coaching staff that understands their physiological changes. And that's just the way it is until they're U16 and above.
Yeah.
Okay, so why don't, Shelley, thank you for jumping in. We're going to take 2 more questions because I want to be very grateful for the panelists' time. So Diana, I know you popped on and you put yourself off of the black screen, so you may have a question if you want to, or if you don't, it's fine, but we can take a couple more.
Sorry, just came on with my video on, but I can.
Okay. Okay, so I've got a question from Sonia Young. If we can only participate partially on a ski team 1 day a week versus 2, the club said that's okay. What are your thoughts? Do you recommend, and then separately, do you recommend any ski race camps like at Mount Hood or Jackson Hole, etc.? I will let somebody else answer the partial one. And I would say it just, Sonia, I don't know how old your kids are, but ski race camps I would say, don't worry about that, for the first several years, unless it's a holiday camp at the mountain that you're already doing, and it's just going to be more of the same and more fun, and maybe bringing in some other kids, or if they're in a Devo program and the race team is having a holiday camp and they're kind of mixing Devo racers with the ski team, then it may be a great time to do the camp. But in the summer, it's just a lot if you've got a young racer. So I'm going to let when it talks about maybe yeah.
And my kids are 7 and 9 right now.
Okay.
The ones that are doing this. Yeah.
Okay, so
Thank
Darcy,
you.
I'll let you kind of jump in on that one.
Yeah, I think it would depend for the one day on the weekend. It would depend if there's a lot of kids in the club doing the one day. The issue we've had at our club is the other kids progress so much quicker if they're skiing a full day more on the weekend, especially with the younger kids. So the ones that are coming once a week really get frustrated. They just, for whatever reason, it doesn't take a lot of time on snow for them to sort of get new skills and get faster. So that's probably only a struggle. If you have a bunch of kids that are in the same boat and they're all okay with it, then I think that's fine. But we've had just, one kid that says, we just want to do one day a week. And yeah, they don't connect as much with the group, which I think is tough when they're young. And then it's just their progression isn't as quick. So that's definitely something to think about.
I can add on to that too. I think determining how many days a week should also be a bit of the drive from the child. If you're pushing them out the door every morning and they're not enjoying it, or they're getting burnt out, having a day off here or there because Sally's got a birthday party they want to go to, I wouldn't force them to go to a 2-day if, there's a fine line between enough and too much. So you kind of have to read your own child and where your own child is at mentally for it. I mean, and in the same breath, definitely encourage them to stay committed to whatever they've signed up for. But I know that my daughter, if I didn't give her a day off every once in a while, she wouldn't have stayed in racing. And she did stay in racing because she did get to take the day off and go to somebody's birthday party. But yet we also have in our club, as you transition older, you have the option of a 2-day program or a 3-day program. And then the 3-day program, you get extra homework from school and you take the day off school and go midweek training. So there is, 8, you said 7 and 8 or 7 and 9 or something like that. That's pretty young.
7 and 9,
so,
yeah.
They'll pretty much feed you with information of how much they want to be there. So definitely keep your ears open and listen to what they're wanting.
Okay, we had this will be our last question. This one is from Lena, and she said her son is 10 and just did his first year at the Stratton Freestyle program. How difficult would it be for him to transition to a U12 Alpine team with no prior formal race experience? Michelle, maybe you could answer that because you're within the Stratton program.
I think it's so I'm not going to say it'll be seamless, but he's at the age that I think if he's going to make the transition, he would want to make it now. I mean, this is a perfect time. At the U12 age, it's still about athleticism and balance. And if he's got that because he's been a freestyler, then he's going to be able to transition to Alpine. So I'd say go for it. This is definitely the time to do it, and he'll catch up.
So that is our 45 minutes. I want to thank Diana, Joy, Michelle, and Darcy so much for all of this wisdom. Again, this is going to be recorded and I will upload it to Facebook and probably to YouTube as well. So we will have this information that we can pass along. And if you're interested in more, we can do another one on a freestyle. We could do a freestyle panel. We could do a panel about ski academies. We can do a panel about non-racing weekend programs. There's lots of different opportunities. And I think with now we have 1,500 members in the group, we can find, I know.
That's crazy.
I started this a year ago and we've added 1,500 members in a year. So I think we can kind of crowdsource experts to help out moms in whatever kind of niches that we have interest in. So guys, thank you so much for your time and for your energy and your wisdom. And next week, we are going to be having a woman from the snow sports industry, one of those professional groups, who's going to be talking to us about prepping your skis for summer storage. So excited about that one as well. So enjoy your Thursday nights, everybody, and I will see you on Facebook.
Thank you.
Thanks.